private radar since 1989. You see it. Yeah, man, madam, no, Romy and Virgo represent.
Open the doors for the people in poverty. Open the doors if you care for humanity. Open the doors at the people of society out there.
And so in the first segment, we'll take a look at, we're looking at themes. So we have to start off, we usually start off looking at the editorial, and I tend to use the one, even though I liked both editorials. They had an editorial in their mandala, Matura Shepherd, Big Move, and that was from this past Tuesday's edition of their mandala. And then from this past Friday's, Oppression and Expectations from the Mandala newspaper. Let me read, like I usually do, a couple sentences from the first paragraph. Oppression and Expectations. Whenever we consider our situation as a Belizean people, the first thing at this newspaper begin our analysis with this. Do that again. Whenever we consider our situation as a Belizean people, the first thing we at this newspaper begin our analysis with is this. We Belizeans are an oppressed people. In present day terms, what this means is that the commodities we labor to produce and export have much less financial unit value than the products we are importing from rich countries. So that even though we have survived slavery and escaped colonialism, we experience daily discomforts and actual pain because we cannot generate enough financial wherewithal to construct and repair our infrastructural requirements, modernize our educational system, raise the standards of our healthcare, patrol and defend our borders, and so on. And so that lays the foundation for oppression, and then the other part of it is entitled "and Expectations." And so I'm sure both of you read it, but one of the things that I liked is that it tied in being oppressed to being angry, then systems in place for us not to express our anger, and then we create expectations because we want to change our reality for many of us who are oppressed, and it's the majority of people who are oppressed, as opposed to the minority who at times would come from impoverished communities, but get an opportunity to, lack of a better word, social climb, education, access to education, professional careers as attorneys, business people, doctors, and then many of the oppressed people would look for a hero. And so then we have, for example, someone like Gabriel Hobbs. And so the editorial ends off about, you know, based on the famous words from Brother Minister of Immigration and all the other things, wait a minute, Mustafa. I am God, we're not God. And so it's to remind him to take a deep breath, and it's understandable that he may take it as an attack, the way he's being held accountable publicly, but to take a deep breath, because when he comes across the way he's coming across, it doesn't help the situation for either party. So, do you, when y'all both read the editorial, Samiyyah and Marisol, did you all think about our realities in that framework before, being oppressed, being angry, and the inequity between wealth distribution in Belize, for example?
I've thought about the fact of people being oppressed, oppression and anger, you know, like going hand in hand in the sense of the violence that we were seeing on the streets. And even before, you know, not just the violence that of young men against each other, but young men or people acting out against Chinese grocers, for example. And, you know, so it's just one, for me, that was like one oppression causes anger and frustration, and then we act out on people who we might not even know or oppress themselves. But when I read this editorial, the beginning it made me think about the Caneros and, you know, the situation with them that, you know, I know that it was talking about the disparity between the value of the things that we import versus the value of the things that we export, or the value of the things that we sell. But in this case, it's an outside force coming in and not giving, or, you know, and not being willing to contemplate fair value for something that we here are producing, that farmers, you know, people working with earth are producing. And so for me, it's, yeah.
Good point.
I think for me, what it did was reflect on the fact that that oppression is so ingrained in our society that it's so much a part of our reality. I would want to say that many of us simply miss it. Yeah. We don't reflect on it. It's just so normal.
We take it for
and
granted.
I think exactly, and especially people in the middle classes and worse, the upper classes who themselves are not facing that, they just tend to pass that by. And it's of course one of the criticisms that has been made about politicians, you know, that because you're high rolling, I don't even know if that's a phrase used, but you're living the life.
Yeah.
And so we tend to skip that, and I like the fact that this editorial did that for me, and I hope that it would have done the same for other people, and in particular at this time of the year. I mean, it comes down to the Christmas cheer program that has received so much criticism, and then criticisms in the street of people who are oppressing. You know what, we're going to our area representatives' office and we want to know how they're going to distribute this money because we need it.
Yeah.
And they can't get it. In one case, I was being told that, you know, they show up consistently every day, but the area representative is not there. And you know, everyone at this time, and especially families, you know, who have large numbers in their families, they want to be able to provide for their families. You spoke about the cañeros, and I had another moment of reflection this week from Sunday, I believe, last Sunday, when I went up for the very first time to cover a general meeting of the Belize Sugarcane Farmers Association. And I was completely blown away. Someone described it as democracy in its purest form, you know, and that was so amazing.
Tell us what it was. Share with us. What happened?
There were about 1,000 sugarcane farmers, and I believe their families, children, all the way up to, you know, like elderly people. And the motions came out of the actual cane farmers themselves, and there were some who complained to their representatives or the executive, and they're like, you know what, you're our representatives, you're our leaders, explain to us what you think should be the best way forward. But the majority of them seem to think, and the leader's response was, no, it should come from you guys. And that was another amazing point, because they are so well versed with the situation. And these are cañeros, people who...
So the average cañeros, not just the leaders, are
exactly,
they okay, good.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's something that I think outside, looking in, we don't expect that. But being there was so beautiful to watch. Now, there was a motion that was passed, and it's in relation to $600,000 that had been set aside for the establishment of a lab. And the cañeros voted to use that in a fashion that I personally didn't see. Like, I'm looking, again, I was looking from outside in, and I'm like, you know, I personally wouldn't, if I was a cañero, I wouldn't have voted for it that way. But at the end of the day, it was a majority who had this say, even though, you know, their leaders explained to them, well, this is what the money is there for, and we don't want that down in the future. You come and say, well, it's not there anymore. But, you know, they wanted it to be for what they wanted it to be. And finally, you know, I was speaking to several people, and, you know, they made me see the light, so to speak. You know, they say, well, even though it's a little money to be shared among all the cane farmers, when you have 5 children in your family, $112 can buy a ham, it can buy a turkey. And basically, that's what people want at this time. So it just speaks to the reality of what people are facing out there.
I'm going to throw this in just because I know we're doing end of year review, but you know, your reaction to the cañeros makes me think of my reaction when the Mayan leaders come to the media, because I am fascinated by their system of democracy and the way that they organize their society. And I think that all of us, there's a lot to learn from them. And it's the same thing with the way that the entire community is informed and engaged and everybody is a part of the decision-making process, that the leaders never say, they don't make statements on their own, they don't, speak on behalf, speak as if they know for everybody else. They go to their people first and discuss with them. And that's something that I would really love to see, that I expect to see our leaders, our national leaders start practicing. And they're a long way from that, but I think if people keep realizing that other forms of democracy and socialization are possible, then that's possible as well.